This is Governor Brian Kemp.
And I'm First Lady Marty Kemp.
This Crime Victims' Rights Week, we say thank you to all those working to support survivors across the state.
And to the survivors of crime, while we can never fully understand what you have been through, we want you to know there is hope for a bright future and resources available to you.
Take some time this week to come together and learn how you can be part of the help victims need and how you as a survivor can benefit from those opportunities.
Georgia is proud to support our survivors and will continue to do so in the months and years ahead.
Thank you for all you do.
God bless.
Good morning. Good morning. My name is Keir Chapman. I'm the Deputy Director of the Georgia Office of Victim Services. I'm humbled and honored to address you all today. Before I jump into the heart of today's discussion, I must take a moment to acknowledge the leadership present here today, including your esteemed agency leaders and elected officials. Also, the great Clayton State University for being our host facility this year. Your unwavering commitment to supporting victims of crime is truly commendable. As we convene during National Crime Victims' Rights Week, we must reflect on the journey that has brought us to this moment. Since its inception, this week has served as a beacon of hope and solidarity for those who have endured the unimaginable pain of victimization. It has been a time to honor their resilience, amplify their voices, and reaffirm our collective commitment to justice. This year, as we embrace the theme of options, services, and hope for crime victims, we're reminded of the vital importance of providing comprehensive support to those in need. Each word in this theme holds significant weight. Options signify empowerment. Services represent tangible assistance, and hope embodies the promise of a brighter tomorrow. Together, they form the foundation upon which we can transform lives and communities. It is my distinct privilege to introduce someone whose tireless dedication to the cause of victim rights epitomizes the spirit of this week. Dr. Rita Davis Cannon, Director of Victim Services for the Prosecuting Attorneys Council of Georgia, is not just a leader, she's a beacon of hope for countless individuals across our state. With over 2 decades of experience as a crime victims' rights advocate, Rita has been a driving force behind some of the monumental changes we've witnessed in our criminal justice system. From providing statewide consultation and training to advocating for policy reforms, Rita's impact is immeasurable. Her research and advocacy have not only elevated the discourse surrounding victims' rights, but have also transformed the lives of thousands of who looked for her for guidance and support. Today, as we embark on a panel discussion exploring the journey from surviving to thriving after a crime, let us draw inspiration from survivors, unwavering dedication and resilience. Let us heed the call of collaborative efforts and proactive measures, and ensure that every victim receives the support and justice they deserve. In closing, I urge each of you to embrace the theme of this year's National Crime Victims' Rights Week, not just in words, but in action. Let us stand together as a champion of justice. Advocate for the voiceless and be beacons of hope for all those who've been touched by crime. Again, I present our moderator, Dr. Rita Davis Cannon.
Thank you so much, Pierre. Thank you, everyone. Now I gotta take a few breaths. I am extremely honored, and it's a privilege to be here today, especially during this National Crime Victims' Rights Week. I'm excited to be here with the Georgia Office of Victim Services, and especially with our esteemed panel that you're going to hear from. So at this time, allow me to say that as an organization and as a shared community and a student body here at Clayton County, it is actually all of our responsibility and in our best interest to understand, to support, and care about the needs of each other. Crime in our communities affects everyone, and we are all in the position to offer support in some way, even if it's as simple as a kind word that inspires shared hope. So today we have several agencies that have accepted the nationwide call to action to share how they can help and to explore what options, services, and hope they bring to our communities, and specifically to our crime survivors. Okay, so Let me invite you, Ms. Gabriella Leon from Tapestry. I'm going to invite you to the stage. It's okay? Thank you, Gabriella, for being here. Gabriella. Mr. Mel Hewitt with Civil Justice for Crime Victims. I'm going to invite you to the stage. Please join us. We have Ms. Danielle Lewis with the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council. I am inviting you to the stage for the conversation. Andrea Hughley with the Southern Crescent Sexual Assault Center and Child Advocate Center. I am officially inviting you to join the conversation. Ms. Jess Roth with Frontline. I am inviting you to the stage to have this conversation with us today. And Ms. Latoya Mitchell with the Georgia Center for Child Advocacy. I am inviting you to join this conversation today. Thank you all. We are so lucky to have you here today, okay? So, let's start off with some introductions. I'm going to ask each of you to please introduce yourself to the agency that you represent and your professional background. And we'll start from right to left.
Yes, we're on. Hi, I am Latoya Mitchell. I am with the Georgia Center for Child Advocacy. I serve as the Director of Advocacy Services. I have over 13 years of experience with child advocacy centers. Majority of that time being spent being a forensic interviewer as well as a family advocate. I was most recently promoted to my new position as Director of Advocacy Services, and I am happy to be here.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jess Roth. I work with the Out of Darkness Department at Frontline Response. I'm the Community Intervention and Training Coordinator there. I've been there for 9 years now, working within Safe Home with our hotline and transport teams in order to intervene and help victims of human trafficking.
Thank you.
Good morning, my name is Andrea Hughley. I'm with Southern Crescent Sexual Assault and Child Advocacy Center. I serve in multiple roles at the agency. For the past 11 years, I've worked as an education and outreach coordinator, as well as a forensic interviewer, and so I'm newly taking on that advocacy role.
Thank you.
Good morning. Good morning. My name is Mel Hewitt. I'm just a lawyer. They had a picture up earlier by the hairline, which is old. I represent probably 90% of what I do is representing victims of crime in civil litigation.
Thank you so much.
Hi, I am Danielle Lewis, and I am the Director of Communications and External Affairs for the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council, affectionately known as CJCC. I have been with CJCC and working in this sphere for about 13 years. I started off as the first training and outreach coordinator for the Victims Compensation Program, so that's near and dear to my heart. For those of you who are not familiar with CJCC, we are an executive branch agency that is tasked with administering grants for state and federal programs for victim services and criminal justice, as well as administering the Victims Compensation Program.
Hello everyone, my name is Gabriella Leon. I'm Tapestry. I've been with Tapestry since 2015, so it's been 9 years already. Time flies. I started first as a domestic violence advocate, and then I transitioned to the human trafficking program. I'm the outreach coordinator. I do trainings, outreaches, and any other role that comes up. I think we all experience that, right? It's not only one thing that we do. Case manager, work in different programs with different grants in our program. So we do a little bit of everything, and I think these are things that we all like. We are here to help our survivors, and happy to be here.
Thank you all. Thank you all. So I do have questions that I'm going to ask each of you individually, but I have one more question in regards to confidentiality that I want to ask each of you to respond. So for any victim service agency or community organization working with survivors, we understand that maintaining levels of confidentiality is paramount to preserving the safety, privacy, and trust of those seeking services. So how does your organization protect victim confidentiality? And again, we can start at the end. We can start here with you, Jeffrey. I'm so sorry. Am I going to do the process?
Let's do it this way. Okay, so obviously victim confidentiality is very important to all of us. In our agency, for example, in our case folders and things like that, there are no names. We have codes for all of our clients. Nothing in our case notes, for example, are going to go into much detail, kind of like to identify who the client is. It's going to be more general about the services that they receive. Anything that we, for example, if they have to be referred to other agencies, we ask our clients if they want to be referred. They sign a release of information, so we can refer them to, for example, like counseling or maybe a legal referral, immigration referral. If they need to talk to law enforcement, for example, we also ask them to sign a release of information. And we share only what our client allows us to share. So we will ask them, do you give us permission to do this or say this? Because yes, it's very important, right? But also, asking them to be careful also when they are maybe talking about their case or who they talk to also maintain their privacy and their confidentiality. So that's kind of what we would do in Tapestry.
Thank you. Ms. Lewis, how does your organization protect victim confidentiality?
So I'll go with the victims compensation programs, particularly since I think that is going to be the focus for today. So most of our information that we receive through the victims compensation program or forensic medical examination or forensic interview programs, they are entered. We get the applications and they're handled by our applicants and their staff, and they are confidential, they're locked up. As a matter of fact, any information that we have to verify, even as far as a record, or if we have to do that, we have training, and we have signs that we put on the door. If you haven't gone through that confidential training, you can't even enter that room at that point. And we also have a victims compensation portal where they can actually enter the information confidentially, yes. Been talking about it and got tongue-tied on it. But yes, so we make sure that we follow the standard protocols. And even with us, there's some information that even the victim can't get because it's confidential with law enforcement. And because of the statute and how our agency interacts with law enforcement, we even receive that information confidentially.
Thank you so much.
I'm gonna be much shorter and it's easier for me. We have to.
Thank you.
Legally. As attorneys, you've got attorney-client privilege, so we can't disclose it if we wanted to. But then in addition to that, we handle a lot of sexual assaults and children's assaults. If we file a lawsuit, we'll use a pseudonym or initials to keep them out of it. We are very protective of things like medical records, things like that we have to use to prosecute a civil case.
Thank you.
Our agency, of course, we are HIPAA compliant, but I do want to talk a little bit about a program that we use to safeguard our forensic interviews. And so we use a program called Guardify. And so it's kind of like a cloud system. It allows us to save those interviews and upload them and share them with law enforcement or DFACs in a way that protects it. And so years past, we would burn DVDs. So we would interview a child, it was recorded, we would burn the DVD and send it along with law enforcement. Well, we heard of issues where DVDs were lost. Someone found a DVD in Walmart parking lot because it fell out of somebody's briefcase or their information. And so with this program, it allows us to, one, it has two-factor authentication, so we can't just access it. But it allows us to safeguard those interviews and the information, like our notes and all of that that comes along with that, so that the information is just not out and about. It also assists within the DA's office when that information is sent over to them. It allows them again to be able to safeguard it in a manner, because anyone can't just access it. They have to have it either sent from our organization or shared from the law enforcement officer that we upload it to. So, great program. It's my understanding that a lot of other CDCs use that program, but it helps us to safeguard that information.
Awesome, thank you for sharing that.
But we are similar, where we don't share or disclose any information. If women are in our safe home, we neither confirm or deny that they have called our hotline. If we ever get calls or questions to our hotline about them, when a survivor enters the home, she's able to put somebody who is a safe contact on her paperwork, and if they are not listed on her paperwork, we will not disclose any information. When we work with law enforcement, medical agencies, and even the long-term programs that we refer to, we always have both parties sign a release of information.
Awesome, thank you.
Similar to what all of us have said up here on the panel, our agency, Georgia Center, we are HIPAA compliant as well. But in addition to that, our agency has interagency agreements with various other agencies. So with those interagency agreements, that means that we only share information with those partner agencies within that agreement. Because our agency deals with child victims, we are providing that information to the legal guardian. The legal guardian will also sign releases of information so that we can make referrals on their behalf for their child, for counseling. So we do provide information on the front end when children come into our center for forensic interviews. In meeting with the caregiver or the non-offending caregiver, we provide them with notification that the information will be shared with those core partners within that agency so that they are aware who that information is going to, should it be shared.
Thank you all. I know we said this and you all have similar processes in place, but I thought it was very important for us to reiterate that, because you can have an agency full of resources and support and services, but if you don't have that trust built in the community, then we're not able to really provide those services to those crime victims and survivors. So thank you all for protecting their information and building that confidentiality piece in your programs. Okay, so I'm gonna put Mel Hewitt in the hot seat. He's like, oh yes, he's first. Okay. But what I wanna do, because these questions are really specific to civil justice, okay? And anyone else, when I ask individual questions, if you have anything that you want to add, please feel free to jump right in, okay? So for you, Mr. Hewitt, can you explain civil liability concerning a criminal case?
Sure. Well, I used to be a cop. I used to be able to put people in jail. Now I can only sue people. I don't prosecute the bad guys. What we do is we'll pursue a civil case against any negligent party. That could be a hospital, it could be a school, it could be a parking lot, it could be almost any place that was responsible for allowing whatever happened to happen. So, and really we can sometimes, and some prosecutors are happy to see us, others are not. And anybody wants to know, I can tell later the whys, but we often work with law enforcement because we want the bad guys in jail as much as anybody, but our job is to seek adequate and appropriate compensation for a victim, a crime victim. Did I answer the question?
You did. What types of civil lawsuits, specifically to crime victims, have you filed on behalf of a crime victim?
Well, a lot of our cases involve sexual assaults. And they occur all over. Some of them, despite where I am, some of them involve Title IX, nursing home abuses, where people are either physically or sexually abused. Any type of case like that where where someone is victimized, and it could be just I don't want to minimize by saying just an assault, but where somebody's beaten up or shot or somehow harmed as a result of someone else's negligence.
Thank you. Other than lawsuits, are there any other services that you have assisted victims with legally?
Well, there's not any real services that we can provide, other than we work with law enforcement, we work with some 501c3s or entities that are private as opposed to public entities, Tapestry, a number of entities like that. We'll refer to CJCC. We'll try to get people to get any place they can get for either the counseling help or the financial help that they'd be entitled to.
Yes. And for me working in the prosecution realm, we see where that criminal side and the civil side they kind of coincide. And so when you have a prosecution office, or when you have a victim that is a victim of a crime, but they may also be dealing with a divorce, or the crime may have involved monetary, maybe it's they lost large sums of money. How do you step in on the civil side, and how can we refer victims to you in regards to that? What supports it?
Well, you would refer them to me, because they're entirely different. I mean, some people think, oh, you're a lawyer, so you know how to do that. That's not true. And in Georgia, we're really not supposed to specialize, but we have areas of concentration. And mine is really a victim of a crime. Mm-hmm. And should I mention the statute at this point?
Yes.
Everybody thinks it's 2 years. It is and it isn't. In normal cases, let's say you're in a car wreck, it's 2 years. But if there's a criminal act involved, there's an extension to it where you can get up to 6 years. So just because that 2-year statute is run, don't talk to somebody about it. As far as financial crimes, we don't handle financial crimes, but we'll put you in touch with the lawyers that handle financial abuses.
Okay. And how would a victim obtain a lawyer for a civil suit? And are your services pro bono, or is there a cost involved for retainment?
No, pro bono is not us. Even though what we
That's why we're here asking these questions, right? We need to know.
what we think we're doing is pro bono or for good, but it's all a contingency. There's not the lawyers that do this kind of work do it on a contingency. The risk goes 100% to the law firm. So we'll not only put in the time and the research and the trial, the work with the lawyers and the paralegals, but we'll advance the costs that could be $10, $20, $30, $50, a couple $100,000, depending upon the case, that we'll invest. That's what makes us not good losers. Because if we lose, it's no risk to the person. So that's a bit of a pro bono. There is no risk to any crime victim. There shouldn't be. There's none that I know of. But the lawyers doing this stuff, especially the reputable lawyers do this stuff, they don't charge clients anything.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Front line.
Everybody go?
I have a few questions for you. Well, several questions for you. Okay. So what can I do if I have been a victim of human trafficking, or if I know someone who's been a victim of human trafficking? It's a very broad general question.
Yes, if you know somebody who's been a victim of human trafficking and you need to just make a report about the incident, then you can call the National Human Trafficking Hotline. And also in Georgia, you can call the Georgia Human Trafficking Hotline, and then there's an option to make a report to the GBI if you suspect something happening. For the victim or survivor, they can call themselves to the hotline, frontline response. We answer calls for adult victims of sex trafficking, so that would be anybody 18 and older. If they're under the age of 18, then they go through the CACGA. Our safe house is not set up for minors. So they would call the hotline, and then once they determine that they choose to come to us, we believe that the survivors need to have the choice in each step. So our hotline advocates would explain what our program does. If it's something that they're interested in, then we will send a transport team to go pick up the survivor wherever she is and bring her to our home. If it is a male survivor, then we will bring him to a hotel. Our safe home is only for females, but we do serve male victims of trafficking as well, but our case managers work with him while he's in a hotel, making sure that he's safe.
Thank you. What services might a survivor of human trafficking need once they are out of these situations?
It's a wide variety. Each situation is different. The first step would be safety, making sure that they are in a safe place away from the perpetrators and those that are victimizing them. The next thing would be basic needs. They need a place to stay, so housing, food, clothing. Many times survivors will come to us with nothing other than the clothes on their back. So they need those types of immediate physical needs, doctor's appointments, and they might need dentist appointments, all of those type of things. And then just services like trauma counseling, job training, maybe to further their education. And so within our home, we run crisis stabilization home where women are with us for an average of 3 to 4 weeks. We don't kick them out after that time. That's just about the average time it takes for us to get them placed into a long-term care program that can meet some of the extended needs they have.
Awesome. What are some of the specific industries or settings in our community that might be vulnerable to human trafficking that we need to be aware of?
We see it in a variety of settings. So trafficking, a lot of it happens online now. The FBI did a study, I don't remember which year it was, but almost 80% of trafficking now is handled online. And so it's important to make sure that youth and just the general public knows to be safe online. We also see illicit massage parlors where trafficking is happening, in strip clubs, so we see trafficking happening, and it also could be happening just out of somebody's home. A lot of the stories of women who come through our home, that's how it started, was familial trafficking, where they were living at home, going to school, but at night their caregiver was selling them either to trade for drugs, to trade for rent money, whatever it may be.
Thank you. What are some of those red flags or indicators that someone might be a victim of human trafficking for those who really just don't know?
Right. So major indicators would be a sudden change in their behavior. So maybe a youth who's at school and is getting good grades and then all of a sudden has a drop in grades. It could be, we see this especially with older teenagers, suddenly having really expensive things. That might be a pimp who started to groom them by doing something which is called a Romeo pimp or boyfriending, where they love bomb somebody, give them all these expensive gifts, gain their trust, and then will turn after several months into an exploitive situation. So suddenly having expensive gifts, change in behavior, maybe they all of a sudden become, really closed off, depressed, or the opposite, where all of a sudden the person is very promiscuous and open sexually in a way that they had not been before.
And what can be done in our communities to raise awareness of human trafficking?
I think events like this are really important. I'm a strong advocate for it being mandatory for schools to host experts in the field to come make this a part of their curriculum, where they're teaching students the warning signs. The average age of entry into sex trafficking in Georgia is 14 and a half. And so I think we need programs in our middle schools and high schools that are teaching kids how to be safe online, how to just be safe around other people. And I think also just raising awareness as a whole in the community. Sometimes sex is taboo to talk about, and so nobody wants to talk about it actually happening. So having open discussion, I think, is important to raise that awareness.
Thank you. I have one last important question. As many of our crimes of exploitation and abuse, human traffickers often prey on members of marginalized communities and vulnerable individuals. So in your experience, what are some specific needs of victims who are minors or males, female individuals who identify as lesbian, gay, transgender? What would be in your experience?
Yes, I say any type of marginalized community has a greater risk. We definitely see that throughout our home. With minors specifically, you might be able to answer better than I do because I only deal with 18 and older.
Let's feel free to jump in.
Yes, so you want to talk about minors first?
Repeat some of the question, please.
In your experience, what are some specific needs of victims who are minors, male, female, who identify in these specific?
Well, for minors, this kind of goes back to like environmental. So oftentimes a need is being met if a minor gets involved with trafficking. In their mind, they don't necessarily view themselves as victims, so they're getting their needs met in some way, whether it's an expensive gift or even a place to stay. In our marginalized communities, those basic needs are being met. A place to stay, food, clothing, things like that. So if we could, provide, those basic needs, and that doesn't even go to just the trafficking community, that even speaks to the victims that we see at our center. Those basic needs, those are the most requested resources from families and victims. So,
thank you. Yes, Danielle, and then we'll have Tapestry.
One thing I wanted to talk about, you talked about adults, you talked about minors, but also I wanted to bring your attention to labor trafficking. That's another form of trafficking that we address with the Georgia Coalition to End Human Trafficking that's housed under CJCC. So in addition to thinking about minors and adults, there is also labor trafficking that you see a lot with hotels, industries, agricultures, so that agriculture, and those are some things that we're also looking at and trying to bring a light on. And the hotline she was talking about where you can find out about all of this information is NHT Georgia. If you go to NHT Georgia, if you dial that number, that will give you the options to address all of these forms of human trafficking that we're talking about.
I actually exactly wanted to say that. Thank you very much. Yes, I think we talk a lot, obviously, when we talk about human trafficking, we have the idea always of it being sex trafficking and minors, and it's very important what you said. We do have to shine a light on the labor trafficking, which is usually like the largest form of trafficking worldwide as well. So CJCC has the task force and everything. We're all part of it as well. As you mentioned, the hotline, I think it's very important. There's different numbers, and there is like for sex trafficking, for labor trafficking, so anyone can call and find that option there. So yes, thank you for saying that.
No, and thank you, Gabrielle, timely, because we have a few questions for you, for Tapestry. Can you tell us about, yes, oh, I'm sorry, yes.
Something near and dear to my heart here, what we skipped, and all of this is absolutely correct, but there's an additional part. There's those people that I was talking about before that allow this stuff to happen. The hotels, the motels, the industries, And they can be pursued civilly and have been civilly to, once again, all we can do is compensation for them, but whatever hotel, motel, industry is transportation industries that are participating in this or allowing this to happen, even just not even participating, but allowing it to happen, we go after them, the lawyers can go after them as well.
And thank you.
Civilly.
Thank you, and I think a lot of survivors don't know that, so
That-
thank you for
a lot
sharing
of
that
nothing.
information. So Gabriella, can you tell us about the services and resources your agency provides for immigrants and refugee victims?
Yes, so Tapestry works with foreign nationals who have been victims of domestic violence, sexual assault, and human trafficking, sex and labor. And we provide direct services to victims of domestic violence and human trafficking, legal advocacy for domestic violence survivors. We have a family violence intervention program as well, which is the court mandated course that offenders have to take. We provide obviously community education, outreach. We do outreach, for example, to like health fairs and things like that, but excuse me, but we also have our program that does outreaches to South Georgia and the farms. So we do that as well, and to get out the information, you know, of raising awareness of what is available out there for victims of human trafficking and what is the help available, because as you know, as we mentioned, there are certain communities and certain populations that are more vulnerable to human trafficking. And obviously, you know, we talk about minors, LGBTQ+, and also foreign nationals. They're very vulnerable to being oppressed, discriminated, and to be exploited. So, and because maybe a lot of our clients may be undocumented, or for, you know, they overstayed their visas, for example. So they fear, obviously, that type of, the fear of immigration, what's going to happen, will I be deported? And so they don't speak out. So we try to reach them and provide services and information that there is help available and that there are laws in the United States that protect the victims. So that's what we do.
How do you work with law enforcement and other agencies to ensure victims receive the assistance they need?
So we are very thankful for the partners and the relationships that we have with law enforcement. They are very good in referring to us. The majority of our clients are referred, in human trafficking programs especially, they're referred from our law enforcement partners. They know the services that we provide. They know about the work that we do in the communities, confidentiality and everything, so they refer to us. And even, for example, if it wasn't referred, it was referred to us by a victim service provider or a legal referral, immigration attorney. We will know also to who we could refer to in the law enforcement partners. And the resources that we try to provide, again, are anything that a person could be eligible for. So if, for example, the biggest concern, again, if they are undocumented, might be immigration relief. So we'll see if there is an immigration relief available for the person, and we'll refer them to screening with immigration attorneys. If they have counseling needs as well, we work with partner agencies for counseling, and we'll be able to provide that service. And our services are free of charge. We don't charge our clients, and any type, for example, if it would be a counseling referral, we also provide the cost of that. We'll cover that cost. If they need, for example, housing assistance, we don't have a shelter, but we will be able to, maybe if there's like an emergency, we could see what we can do. We work with other shelters as well, like human trafficking shelters, but also domestic violence shelters. And if they're able to take our clients, then we'll work with that. But I think something that was mentioned before, like the very biggest thing at the very beginning is that the person has to have like safety, basic needs covered before trying to do anything else. So first we'll see that. Are they safe? Do they have their basic needs covered? And then we'll see what else could be available. And it will depend obviously also on each client. Every client has different needs. So some might need a little bit more, some might need a little bit less. They might be just looking for something just as an immigration referral, and that's it. But we'll meet them where they're at, and we'll provide those services.
Thank you. I know we talked about barriers and we talked about the lack of trust that many may have with law enforcement. What, if any, specific efforts does your organization take if they don't come to you to identify those immigrants and those in your communities?
Yes, whenever we're doing our outreach and our trainings, we tell them that law enforcement is there to help the victim. When I was a domestic violence advocate, I remember telling them, like, you have the right to call 911 and tell them if something is going on. And the police is not gonna care if you're undocumented, they want to help. So it's trying to instill that the trust also in law enforcement and the agencies, government agencies, because they might come from a community that does not trust law enforcement or any type of government officials. So it's trying to educate them that it is their right to search, to seek out for help. And when we work, for example, in human trafficking program, when we work with our law enforcement, we know the partners, we know the agents, we know that they are good and that they are caring and that they want to help our clients. And we give them that information and everything. But still, if they are not ready to do so, we're not going to enforce it. Like, we're not gonna force them to talk to a law enforcement agent if they do not want to at that moment. It is their right to say no if they don't want to, and we'll respect that as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So we'll move on to our Criminal Justice Coordinating Council partner. Could you tell us what is actually victims' compensation?
The Victims' Compensation Program helps innocent victims and witnesses. We are able to provide up to $25,000 for reimbursement, for direct reimbursement for some of the financial expenses that are incurred as a result of being a victim of crime. In addition to the Victims' Compensation Program, compensation being the theme, we also pay for forensic medical examinations, and we also pay for forensic interviews.
Is arrest or prosecution necessary for someone to qualify for victims' compensation?
Unfortunately, as I look around, I know a lot of you who work in this field and who may have been victims or know people who are victims understand that unfortunately, not every victim will get their day in court. Or if they get their day in court, the outcome may not be exactly as they expected. So for us, arrest and prosecution are not a program requirement. As long as we have documentation that shows that a victimization occurred, then they could be eligible for the for the Victims' Compensation Program. And I was gonna say, even in cases where they don't report to law enforcement, we could use a forensic medical examination as entry to the program. Because for those of you who do not know, forensic medical examinations you can get a forensic medical examination in the state of Georgia, and we will pay for it regardless of if you choose to go through with the legal process or not. So even if you do not have police report, if you had an FME, that could be a gateway into the program.
And could you give us the general criteria for victims' compensation?
So for Victims' Compensation Program, we help, as I mentioned, innocent victims and witnesses of violent crime. The first victim, the first type is generally somebody who had a physical injury as a result of being a victim of a violent crime. Another thing that we see, or that you would be eligible for, is if you suffered serious mental and emotional trauma as a result of being threatened with a physical injury or death, or present during the commission of a violent crime. So for instance, if you happen to work at a convenience store and you were robbed, and you were we see these stores on the news all the time, you were one of the lucky ones who actually got away. But just because you got away and you weren't hurt, there's a possibility that you guys still could have serious mental and emotional trauma, right? So that would be an example of somebody who we could help that had serious mental and emotional trauma. Another example would be, say if you were a child and you were in a house that has family violence, and you have seen and heard your parent being abused, even though you were not the primary victim in that case, we could reimburse for mental health counseling for a child or somebody who has been present during the commission of a violent crime. So that's an example of serious mental and emotional trauma. And then you have the immediate family members of homicide victims. They could be eligible for compensation specifically around our mental health counseling. Each of them could get their own $3,000. This includes step relationships. And then there's also Good Samaritans. This is anybody who suffered physical injury or serious mental and emotional trauma as a result of coming to the aid of a crime victim. And then lastly, we have individuals who may have paid for the bills in relation to the victim and in relation to the victimization. For instance, if I had a family friend or a family member and they didn't have insurance and they needed help, and so I stepped in and I said, hey, I'll take care of this. In addition to good karma points, I can also get reimbursed for any expenses that I paid on their behalf.
Okay, thank you. That was my last question, but I think you kind of summed up all of the expenses that's covered under the crime victims compensation.
No,
Okay,
I only talked
you hit on
about
that.
that.
All right, you hit on that.
Yeah, so for the Victims Compensation Program, we can pay up to $15,000 for medical expenses. So this can be for any medical expenses. This includes ambulatory services. This includes dental services. Talked about human trafficking victims, so I would be remiss if I didn't say that we can pay for tattoo removing under medical, because sometimes human trafficking victims have brands that they put on them, so that could also be covered, as well as physical therapy. Sometimes victimizations, it's ongoing, it's not instantaneous, they have to go back for physical therapy, so that's also covered under victims' compensation. We have up to $10,000 that we can reimburse for lost wages. So think about that case scenario that I gave you before about the person who was a victim of a liquor store or a convenience store robbery. In that instance, they may not have a physical injury, but they have serious mental emotional trauma that prohibits them from going back to work because they're traumatized, or in some cases they have a physical injury. So when they lose wages, we can pay up to $10,000 for lost wages. We can pay up to $10,000 for loss of support. This can come in a couple of ways. Say if you were a survivor of a homicide victim, say your husband had gotten into a DUI crash and was killed. If he contributed to the household income, you can get $10,000 for reimbursement for that loss of support. Or if you were a victim of domestic violence, for instance, and the perpetrator was living in the household and contributed to economic support, and now they're away, now they're in prison, but there is still that gap because they provided financial support, then we can pay in those instances as well. Then we have up to $6,000 that we can pay for funeral expenses. And for the funeral expenses, we can also pay, in this instance, transportation for the body, clothing for the deceased, headstones, the headstones. And then we have $3,000 for mental health counseling. And we also have up to $1,500 for crime scene sanitization. If you do the calculations, you'll see that that's more than $25,000. Our program cap is $25,000 per victim, per victimization. So just keep that in mind.
A lot of resources and services. Thank you so much. So can we move on to the Southern Crescent Sexual Assault Center? And she did say a lot, but their website has all of this information, so you don't have to remember it, but they do support in a huge way. So thank you for all that you do. So, from the Southern Crescent Sexual Center, what should someone do if they believe they have been sexually assaulted?
The first thing they should do is get themselves to a safe place, whether it's themselves or their children. They should definitely get to a safe place. And I always say the next thing should be knowing and understanding that what just occurred, what happened to them or their child is not their fault. There's nothing that they did that caused that assault to happen to them. But definitely get into a safe place. Reaching out to law enforcement if that's something that they choose to do if they're an adult. And then a lot of times they'll reach out or go to the emergency departments. And so I will say this, that we do have protocols set up with a series of hospitals in our service area to where they would triage the victim, make sure that they're overall okay, they're not bleeding or broken bones. And then they would call us and they're transported to our facility, whether they transport themselves or transported by law enforcement, so that they can receive their forensic medical exam or sexual assault kit at our office.
So what are some barriers have you seen for crime victims with disabilities in getting the assistance that they need?
I would say one of the main barriers, and I say this because it's not necessarily a disability, but language is a huge barrier. When we have people that do not speak the English language, they have a hard time accessing services. We do utilize things like the language line to get them, have assistance with that. However, that is not the best situation. We've had cases or instances where they've come in and we were not able to communicate well with them, and as a result, we didn't understand what they fully needed. And that goes along with folks that are deaf or hard of hearing, not having access to those interpretation services so that we can effectively communicate with them. And so I would say that that's one of the biggest barriers that we see in our line of work.
Did anyone else want to follow up with that question? Any barriers that you see that prevent you from being able to provide services? Specific that we haven't discussed?
I would like to mention something that we see. Like I mentioned, obviously, we work with foreign nationals. When they are, before they receive any type of immigration relief, they might be undocumented, and like I mentioned, maybe their visas have expired, and maybe depending on the type of visa that they came in with, because there's certain type of visas like work visas that they can come in with, they find themselves in an exploitation kind of situation. They have to leave, so that visa is no longer valid. They can't work with any other employer. So again, our community as immigrants and foreign nationals, they have a lot of challenges and barriers. And for example, something that we are seeing a lot is, for example, housing, access to housing. Because they are undocumented, they can't get a lease. They can't rent a place, so it's very hard for them to go. They have to run credit checks and things like that, and our clients are not going to have that. They don't have a social security number. They don't have maybe a bank account open, credit cards, things like that. So that's something that we are seeing a lot, and even though we try to help them around this and see what else we can do, it's very hard for them to be able to access that. And obviously, you mentioned like language access as well. They might not have a language that is easy to find on a language line. Maybe some indigenous language as well that people might think. For example, they come from Latin America. They all know Spanish, but not necessarily. There's a lot of countries in Central America that have a very big indigenous communities that have different languages as well. So they might be fluent in that and not Spanish actually. So even in that, accessing that language, it's very difficult. Those are barriers that we can see.
Thank you so much.
Sorry, that made me think of something. I wanted to
Okay.
add one more thing. I'm glad you brought that up because that's a question that we get often, whether or not you have to be a United States citizen to apply for victims' compensation. And you do not have to be a United States citizen to apply for victims' compensation. As long as the crime occurred in Georgia and you meet the criteria, you can be eligible for victims' comp. And again, back to confidentiality. This is not any information that we share or that we outsource. But also under CJCC, to her point, there are a lot of underserved populations, a lot of immigrant communities, and we are very blessed because we have victim services, our victim services division that funds a lot of these underserved programs that are there. So even for these indigenous populations or these other populations within Georgia that are underserved, we do have people in place that can help. And in the back, we have our advocate and customer service team here, and they are amazing, and they do a great job of when we have different communities that we don't have just on hand the resources, they make sure that they connect them to the right people.
Well, thank you. Our overall goal is to provide services for everyone.
Yes.
So thank you for that. Just a couple more questions for you. Are your services free of cost? If not you then. I'm sorry. Going back to you.
If you can repeat the question.
Are your services free of cost? And if not, is insurance accepted?
So yes, our services are free of cost, period. There's no charge for the services, so no victim that comes to our doors or survivor, they will never see a bill for anything from us. And that's from all of the services that they receive. And I know Danielle talked a little bit about crime victims compensation, and so we rely heavily on that service. We are able to have the forensic medical exams, the forensic interviews, all of those things are paid for through CJCC. But in addition to that, so for example, when our survivors come in and they have experienced sexual assault and all of their clothes have been taken because that's evidence at this point. So we provide clothing for them to be able to go home. We provide snacks for them to receive a series of medications to prevent a lot of different things. And so they need a snack to go along with that, and so we provide that for them as well. And again, they don't see a bill for any of those things. As far as insurance, the only time that we can ask about insurance is when we're making a counseling referral, and that's just for referral purposes only. So if there's a situation where we have to refer out for counseling services, so if there's something that our counseling team does not, perform, we'll ask them about their insurance just so that we can assist them with getting the proper services and using their insurance to help assist outside our agency.
Is it safe to say that that's the typical overall consensus of your nonprofit organizations, that these services are available at a no or low very cost?
Ours is no cost.
Okay.
Yeah, same here. Yes.
Okay. Right, and one more question. I think we touched on, and I know we've heard about the medical forensic exam. We've heard that before. What actually is a medical forensic exam, and is that the same as a rape kit? Because we've talked about those.
So there are some similarities, but there are some differences.
Okay.
Forensic medical exam is your basic head-to-toe check, looking over the body to make sure that they're okay overall, and that's for an adult or a child. The sexual assault kit or the rape kit is evidence collection, and so typically when law enforcement is involved there, we're collecting evidence from a victim's body, and so we have about 5 days or 120 hours to do so. And so with the kit, it's a little bit different from the overall forensic medical exam, whereas again, we're collecting evidence. There are swabs, there are envelopes where we're collecting different things. There are black lights involved where we're looking over the individual's body to make sure again that we are going and collecting that evidence that's needed for prosecution. Again, with the forensic medical exam, so with our children cases, for example, we usually have to explain to parents that it's not the typical OBGYN exam where they're going and things are being inserted into their child. And so it's a little bit different. And so we like to tell parents it's just like when they're going to see the pediatrician. Overall, we're making sure they're okay. We're checking their eyes, ears, nose, throat, height, weight, all of those things. And so, of course, there's some other things we're collecting urine to test for any possible STIs or STDs. But overall, it's not as scary as they tend to think. And so we usually have to talk or calm a lot of parents down because they have this fear that, their kid is going to be using stirrups and, again, speculums and things like that are going to be used, and that's just not the case.
So glad we're having this conversation. Yes, go ahead.
I'm so sorry.
I would be remiss, since she brought up sexual assault kits, the rape kits, to not say that under CJCC we do house the sexual assault kit, the sexual assault kit tracking system. And so that is an excellent new resource that we have, that when a victim elects to go through the criminal justice process, they can follow the rape kit all along the way if they sign up, so they can know from the beginning, this is where it is, this is where it is in the process, so they're not in the dark about what happened to their kid and feel that it was just dropped, that they did it and there's no movement and nothing is happening. Through this new system, they can actually see all of the stages with that kit.
Amazing. Thank you so much, and thank you, Andrea. If I can get, I have a few questions for the Georgia Center for Child Advocacy. LaToya, thank you. So what type of resources are you able to connect victims with?
So at our center, our family advocates meet with the non-offending caregiver of the child victim that comes in for the forensic interview. So as far as resources go, we are talking with that caregiver and assessing their needs. So their resources can vary. I said this earlier, most of the time it's those basic needs. So we are connecting caregivers with resources within the community, whether it be a food pantry, a clothing closet, a community agency that offers financial assistance for utilities or housing. It could be a phone call to the child's school to help the parent talk with the school social worker. It could be calling various agencies to figure out what the process is. Oftentimes, caregivers just need help navigating through the system. So we are there just to help with any need that they have. And if there is a need that we cannot meet, this is where we reach out to the community and find other community agencies that can assist.
Thank you. Are there any mental health resources available for victims within your organization, or does your organization provide referrals for that?
Yes, so Georgia Center does offer counseling for the child victims, specifically trauma-focused counseling, which is what we often recommend to the caregivers for their child to receive. As we just stated, our services are offered at of no cost to the family. So we do refer victims to our agency for counseling services. If for whatever reason Georgia Center is not a good fit or we're not able to refer to our agency, we are able to make referrals out to some of our partner agencies as well.
You hit a buzzword that I hear a lot, and that a lot of us hear about being trauma-informed. Could you tell us about what is trauma-informed and how you implement a trauma-informed practice in your organization?
Right, so our agency is a trauma-informed agency. Some of this kind of goes back to, I want to use an acronym here, ACEs, the Adverse Childhood Experiences. Yes. So if you have not heard of that, please look it up. It speaks to a lot for all of us, not just for victims, but for all of us. So being trauma-informed within our agency, mainly it just kind of goes back to meeting that child or that caregiver where they are, knowing that they've come to us because they've experienced something that may be harmful to them, whether it's something bodily or mentally. So just being aware that there are certain things that may contribute to the trauma that this victim or caregiver has, and being mindful in the responses that you give to the victims.
Excellent. Can you explain the basics of the forensic interviewing that you do?
Yes. So a forensic interview is done typically with children from ages ranging from 3 up to 17. A forensic interview is essentially a conversation with the child, a developmentally appropriate conversation. And the interview is conducted by a trained forensic interviewer. There is a protocol that is followed. The purpose of the interview is to gather details for an investigation. So when a child comes in for an interview, that child may have experienced some type of abuse or even witnessed abuse or a violent act. So the forensic interviewer will speak with the child and gather information. Being trauma-informed, knowing that it's okay if that victim isn't ready to talk after. We're not there to make them say or do anything that they don't want to. We want them to be in a space where they are ready to disclose any information. Understanding that this is something hard to talk about. However, at the end of the day, we want to be able to just assess their safety. So if they're not disclosing any information, we just want to know overall, do they feel safe in their home or their environment?
Thank you. One last question. How does your organization address language, transportation, and shelter barriers?
Yes, so with language, we do have some members on staff that are Spanish speaking to assist with that community. However, one of the counties that we serve is extremely diverse, and we oftentimes will have to utilize services with an agency called LATN. And they provide translation and interpretation services. So we can reach out to caregivers to schedule appointments or communication via language line on the day of an interview, because we don't want language to be a barrier in conducting interviews for children. We will seek out an interpreter to be present on the day of the forensic interview, whether that interpreter is needed for the child to conduct the interview, for the family advocate to meet with that caregiver to explain the process, and as well as law enforcement or DFACS to be able to communicate with that family. So our agency is able to utilize that service in regards to language. Transportation, our agency does have an agreement with a taxi company, so we don't want that to be a barrier as well. We will provide transportation to and from an appointment for the forensic interview. Within our clinical department, there is some limited availability to provide some funds to get to therapy sessions. Shelter, everyone seems is kind of struggling with housing right now, so we will refer to our community partner agencies to assist with that. In the past, we've been able to assist some families with maybe just one overnight stay in a hotel. But that is one of the biggest challenges right now, is finding help, because everyone is seeking some sort of assistance with housing.
Thank you. Is there anything else that I missed that that you would like to discuss today, that you think that everyone in the room should know? And that this is a question for everybody on the panel. Is there anything that I missed that you burning inside that we need to know before we leave?
I guess I will share, April is also Child Abuse Prevention Month. So our agency, currently, I know April's kind of coming to an end here, it's going by so fast. Our prevention team is having an event called Prevention Palooza, where they are offering various virtual trainings on child abuse, whether it be prevention, awareness, and even some caregiver information. So if you're interested in a virtual training, they will be every day, 7 begins through the end of the month. Feel free to check out our website, Georgia Center for Child Advocacy.
I think I would just say that for anybody in the room to be, if you know of somebody who is a victim of a crime, being that support person for them, because it can be a very isolating incident, it can make you feel very alone. And we've seen the women who have actually gone from surviving to thriving within our safe home are those that do have support. And so that's what we do as a staff, is try to be their cheerleader through all their next steps. And as they go to their long-term programs, staying in touch, being a person that's not going to be judgmental of all of the issues that they're going to face, of all of the mood swings they're going to have by having to go through all of this. It's a hard thing to be a victim of a crime. There is a lot of emotion that goes into that. And so being that support person for somebody, or if you are a victim yourself, seeking out a support person so that you don't have to do it alone.
Thank you.
Our agency, Southern Crescent, we're celebrating 30 years this year. And so with it, this month being, of course, Sexual Assault Awareness Month, as well as Child Abuse Prevention Month, we've been doing some things on social media, just sharing information about our agency, the history, we've been spotlighting employees for the past couple days, and so follow us social media, so Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and there's one more, Twitter. And just to join along with the celebration of the 30 years. And so our agency started 30 years ago. Our executive director, Gayla Nobles, started the organization after reading an article in the agency about how there wasn't many services for sexual assault victims south of Atlanta. And so back then, your person had to travel to Atlanta or all the way down to Macon to receive services. And so we know there's a bunch of counties in between that services were lacking. And so she started the organization alongside Clayton County DA's office back then. And so over the years, we've grown to now offer Child Advocacy Center services as well as a host of other services. And so just wanted to shout it from the rooftops that we are celebrating 30 years and we're pretty excited about it. Thank you very much.
Any 30 second spiel or anything that I've missed that you want to share about your organization?
Well, not necessarily about the organization, but, you know, and being not totally familiar with who the group is, there's two systems of justice. There's a civil system, the criminal system. The standards that are required in the criminal system are perhaps a little bit more difficult to get over than the civil system. The civil system, what you have to show is what more likely than not happened. So we have to take the ball over the 50-yard line. Oftentimes, because a person's liberty is not at stake, the criminal justice system has to deal with, they have to take it all the way from one end of the field to the other. And it's a slow process. I'm not bad on particular lawyers, but it's more than one call to take on. Okay, it's a long process. The wheels of justice in both systems sometimes move pretty slowly. And if you're going to get involved in the civil justice system, you're going to form a partnership with whatever that lawyer is, because you have to go through discovery and delays, as you do in the criminal justice system as well. But it's not just a quick fix to get the ball across the end zone.
Thank you, and Danielle, and thank you for saying it is a very long, convoluted process, and this is why I'm so happy that we have everyone on stage. We're talking about being trauma-informed so that you are there to support them and help kind of prepare them, so to say, for the lack of better terms, to be able to mentally be prepared to go through this long, convoluted process. So thank you all for that.
Well, before I pass the mic to Danielle, I'll give her a plug. A lot of the organizations that are given free services, and a lot of the people that we refer folks to rely on CJCC for a lot of their support. So it's not only what they do, but it's what they do for a lot of other organizations. So that's an unpaid announcement.
Thank you, ma'am. I was going to say, there's a lot. Our agency is pretty large, and we do a lot. I think that there are two things that are victim-centered that I wanted to share, and that is our DUI Memorial Sign program. If you know anybody who has been impacted by a DUI crash, we have Matt over there. We do erect the DUI Memorial Signs in honor of people who suffered or lost their lives as a result of a DUI crash. We also have unclaimed restitution. Sometimes, Mel had already hit on that. Sometimes restitution is ordered and victims become unlocated, and I know also the Office of Victim Services works with that as well. They become unlocated, and we get the money on our end and we try to find them. So this is a shameless plug. If somebody calls and says, CJCC said that they have money for us, vouch for us. Okay, so call them back. They may. So we have that, and then also working with Marcy's Law, with Rita and Mel are part of Marcy's Law, and with Office of Victim Services and other partners around the state, Georgia Sheriff's Association, and many others. We are launching our automated victim notification system, which is huge for victims to be made aware of their rights and and changes that happen with their case. There's a plethora of things, but as they mentioned before, we do funding there. If you go to cjcc.ga.gov, there is grants and there's funding. Sometimes there are a lot of funding opportunities if you have ideas, if you see gaps in the system that maybe you feel like you can address. We have competitive grants that come up from time to time. Take a look at it, see if there's something available for you to pitch in. This year it's about how can you help. There may be an idea in your head about how you can help. We all heard about some of the barriers. So just check it out, see, apply. As Rita mentioned, I've got to cut myself off. As Rita mentioned, it's imperative that we all understand the resources and the ways that we can help in the community. So check us out. There's a lot of information, a lot of ways. But also, if you have it in you, an idea where you can make a difference, see if there's an agency that you can align with, or if there's funding that you may be eligible to get to help us help others.
I was thinking about, we were talking about language access and everything. In Tapestry, we are a diverse office. We have a lot of languages in our office. But we also obviously don't have a lot of languages that are out there, so we are able to help our clients. So we do a quarterly interpreter training in our office, and anyone that wants to serve as an interpreter for Tapestry, they can sign up with us, and it's like the database that we have. And we go through this training and just kind of going over what is domestic violence, what is human trafficking, and how as interpreters they can serve this population and us as well in moments of interpreting. What to expect during maybe an interview, or if they have to go to maybe a counseling, what they would need to do, and kind of just to raise that awareness that is needed. And they can sign up for this training, and we'll give them instructions on how to also sign up to be an interpreter or to be in our database as well. So they could also serve.
Thank you. That was one of our, thank you so much. That's one of our online questions too, of how is there a way to volunteer or contribute to your agencies? And if so, how to do that?
Also, for Tapestry, they would need to go online. You could go online and you could see like volunteer, they sign up for it. The volunteer, the one that's in charge of the volunteer program will be able to like follow up, call them and see where they could fit it.
Is that for everyone? Could they go online to your websites? Yes. And there's opportunities for volunteering? Yes. Perfect. We had just a few more questions that from our online guests. Are human trafficking survivors similar to DV survivors where they have to be ready to leave and get help? I think Tapestry or...
Yes. Yes, it has to be the survivor's choice. As much as we want change and help for each survivor, they have to want it themselves. So the hardest part of my job actually is women who choose to leave the safe home and go back to their life. But it is, we are there, they can come back anytime they want. It's not a one and done with our organization. So we have ladies who have been coming to us since 2015. There's one woman who's, it takes several times, but she comes back, and now she's actually doing amazing, has a full-time job, but it was a slow journey.
Thank you. Danielle, I think these last questions are for you. One says, do you have to be registered with OVS, which I think they're confusing Office of Victim Services with Criminal Justice Coordinating, so you can make sure they're clear on that to get victim compensation.
No, you do not have to be registered or have to go through any other agency to be eligible for victims compensation. You can go to crimevictimscomp.ga.gov to get information about the Victims Compensation Program. And as I mentioned before, we have an online portal. So you have a couple of options. You can mail in your application, you can fax in your application, you can email your application, or you can apply online. So no, you do not have to have a particular avenue or register with anybody. You as a victim can apply directly.
And I'm gonna give you 2 in 1. Is there a
Okay.
statute of limitations with being able to get assistance with victim compensation? And if a person was a victim 5 to 10 years ago, is that person eligible for monetary? So I think they kind of go hand in hand.
That does go hand in hand. So a couple of quick things. If the crime happened before July 1st, 2014, you have 3 years to apply for victims' compensation. If you were a minor victim at the time of the victimization, you have up to 3 years after your 18th birthday to apply for victims' compensation. So if the crime happened before July 1st, 2014, there was a year that you had to apply, and we could not consider applications after that 3-year mark. So that would depend on the timing, Rita, on that, and if they were a minor. But generally, 3 years after July 1st, 2014, if it was a minor victim, they have 3 years after their 18th birthday to apply.
Thank you. You know, that's all the questions I have, and I want to thank our panelists for all the information. I want to thank all of you for being here, and I'm hoping that you're leaving here inspired to help and encouraged to seek help if you need assistance. Thank you.
Don't run away. Oh, no, come on back up here. Let me move this chair out of the way. I can sit down. Can I get another round of applause for our panelists today? And also for our amazing moderator, Director Rita Davis-Simmons. What a great job, your leadership today. I'd like to present you with a leadership coin from the Georgia Board of Pardons and Paroles for your leadership, not only today, every day, and your staunch support of victims across the state. Thank you so much. So, my name is Chris Barnett. I am the Executive Director for the State Board of Pardons and Paroles. And it's my great honor to be here today and represent the agency at this great event. And as I thought about what I would say today to close out this great event, I thought about the theme of National Crime Victims Week. And that is, how would you help options, services, and hope for crime victims? And it reminded me of a quote from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And it says, life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing to help others? What are you doing to help others? I'd like to thank everybody that's here today. For by your mere presence here today, you are showing support for crime victims and an effort to help others. I know many of you have traveled long distances to be here today with us, and we truly appreciate you engaging in this conversation and supporting crime victims across the nation as we seek to elevate that survivor's voice throughout the criminal justice system. Doing well in the face of adversity takes a great deal of inner strength and fortitude. But it's also very important that you surround yourself with positive people. And I think we can all agree that our panelists are those positive people, waiting to answer that call of service, to be that support, that rock, to fill that need and move someone from surviving to thriving. And I thank you for everything that you do every single day. Thank you so much. As a small token, I would also like to present each of our panelists with one of our leadership coins. Again, to mark not only your leadership here today, but in your leadership every single day as we try to help, support, and do for others each and every day. Thank you so much. I'd also like to thank the Georgia Office of Victim Services. Chris Toussaint, welcome home. Clayton State, right? Yeah, and I have to say, I've been corrected that it is the Clayton State. Is that how it goes?
Big CSU.
Oh, the BCSU, I got it, I got it. Yeah, I just want to make sure, but thank you so much for allowing us to be here. This will conclude our program today, but not the day. We would encourage each of you as you leave here today, engage with our panelists, engage with our staff. I know we've got some DCS folks out here as well. Engage with those that are here. Also, please stop by our vendor tables out there. They are ready and willing to provide some information, some guidance, and some help where we can. And I hope at the end of the day that you felt this was a good use of your time. And maybe you got something from this program that you can take home and help someone that you know, help yourself, help your community. Again, I want to say thank you. Thank you for joining us, and please be safe in your travels home. Thank you so much.